Recording.
Hey everybody, this video is to go through the camera settings for the photo booth. So if you're at this point and you have the majority of everything set up, you may need to make some camera adjustments just depending on the lighting of the venue. As you can see, we're in a living room. We have some ambient light, but not a whole lot. So what we can see coming out of the camera is kind of dark. This requires some adjustments. So once we have the DSLR booth up and running, we would go to the Tools tab. And under the Tools tab, there is the DSLR camera settings, which makes it really cool because now we can control the camera through the program, the software. So what it's telling us now is these are the settings that I have for the camera. Okay. So what I want to do is I want to make these settings work with my photo booth setting. And again, we will leave a generally good setting for you pretty much for any type of event. So if you don't make any changes, you still should be good. But in a scenario where, let's say you have, the blaring sunlight coming in, or it is no light whatsoever, here's a couple of ideas, right? So shutter speed refers to the amount of time the shutter inside the camera opens and closes. So the idea here is when you open it and you close it, and if it's slow, it allows more light to come into the shutter. So if it's dark, allowing that shutter to be slow allows more light. But the problem with that is if your subject, in this case people taking pictures in the photo booth, moves, that movement would also be captured if that shutter is too slow. So for our purposes, we want that shutter speed to be fast. I would say at the very minimum 100 and 1/20th of a second or 1/100th of a second is good. Generally speaking, I wouldn't go slower than that. The aperture is kind of the iris or the retina of the eye, and if it's really wide open, it allows more light. If it's really closed, it allows less light to come in. It also affects the focus of the camera. So for our purposes, I would say we want to stay at least 7.1 or even greater. No more than I'd say 9.0. So I'd say that's the range. 7.1 will allow more light to come in. 9.0 will allow less light to come in. In a scenario where you have blaring sun coming in, and you want to really get rid of the outside light, you may even want to go further than that. And that's something you guys could call me with, or something like that. Shutter speed, also something to keep in mind, is we never ever want to go more than 1/200th of a second. And the reason for this, there you go, 1/200th of a second. So that's 1/250th. This will not work because our flash is only set to go a maximum speed of 1/200th of a second. So if we go faster than that, the camera shutter won't sync with the flash, and you'll get this really weird half dark image, half light image. Nobody wants that, so keep it under 1/200th of a second and you'll be fine. So again, 1/100th to 1/200th is the range. 1/100th will allow more light, 1/200th will allow less light. Okay, last one is ISO. So ISO is kind of, the idea is how much you're going to open the faucet of the camera. So inside the camera there's a faucet, that's the ISO. The more that we open the faucet, like 800, that's allowing more light to come in. 200 or 100 allows less light to come in. Now the tricky thing about ISO though is the higher you go in the number, let's say 800, the more noise it begins to produce. So it creates a grainier image. It's not as attractive to look at. So generally speaking, we try to keep this number low and try to compensate with our flash. I would say for most of our events we go about 400. Never go more than 800 because these cameras aren't really built for anything greater than 800. And let's say you're like outside, there's sunlight, 100 or 200 is really the maximum you want to be at, and then you could use the flash to compensate for that. Okay, so now flash settings, I would say, is once you've dialed this in, you want to set your flash either more or less. There we go. It'll go off every time you adjust the flash amount. You want to set it based on how much light you want in the image. Again, the sweet spot is we don't want an image that's overexposed, or in other words, too bright, and we don't want an image that is too dark. So we want something right in the middle. Looks good. It looks good on screen, and it looks good on the prints. Okay, so I think that is, I think that's everything. So again, guys, if you run into a situation where you don't know what to do with the lighting, feel free to give us a call, and we'll walk you through it.